Today on QDL, we're going to talk about onshoring the knowledge gap. What do we mean by that? Find out when we come back. Welcome back to QDL. QDL is your look at who and what is making news in the world of quality. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest. According to our guest today, there will never be the same amount of manufacturing in the United States today, manufacturing jobs, I should say, as there were in the 50s or the 60s or the 70s, right? Old school manufacturing jobs, by that we mean, think of the kind of the manual manufacturing jobs, really have largely, if not gone away, they've definitely changed. And we've seen workers' roles change more from manual workers to knowledge workers, supplemented by AI and IoT and robotics and a lot of other technology, right? So industry should be focusing on addressing the onshoring knowledge gap or the skills gap that we have seen increasing over the last 10, 15, 20 years. And they should also be looking at attracting younger talent. And this change needs to happen so that U.S. manufacturing companies can compete against foreign competition. Well, here to discuss that with us today is Saar Yoskovitz, CEO of Augury. Augury is an industrial Internet of Things company that focuses on production machine health. Saar, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Hey, great. We had your Augury's VP of Strategy, Artem Krupanev, on the show, 4 or 5 months ago. Mm-hmm. But why don't you just remind our viewers again of what Augury does?
Sure. So Augury works with the largest manufacturers out there. So the likes of Colgate, PepsiCo, and others, in order to make their production lines more reliable and more productive so they can go and restock the shelf in your local supermarket, basically. We do this by offering a full stack turnkey solution that includes both our own proprietary hardware, we manage the connectivity, and then we also run our diagnostics on the data that we collect, as well as provide professional services around reliability consultation and whatnot.
Okay. And you've written in Forbes and some other places I've found that while automation, AI, and the like, robotics will indeed replace jobs, they're also going to create jobs as well. But those jobs are going to require skills that may currently be lacking in the U.S. workforce. What kinds of skills are we talking about?
Sure. So before we dive into that, it's very important to note that there's already a shortage in the workforce in manufacturing today, right? So in one of the conversations I've had with the largest paper manufacturer in North America, they told us that every year they lose 7 to 8% of their staff for retirement. And with them, they lose 25% of the knowledge of how to run their production lines. And there is a big generational gap between, the average skilled worker today is the average age is 56 years old in manufacturing, right? And then there are a full kind of 20, 30-year gap until the new generation that is just now coming into manufacturing. And our customers can't hire fast enough. So we're not talking, as you said, about AI replacing existing talent or enable them to hire less people, at the cost of people that are looking for jobs today. On the contrary, they can't hire fast enough and they can't find enough capable talent to achieve their targets and goals today.
And how far behind? I mean, what kind of specific skills are we talking about, if you can say that? And how far behind is the United States in those skills, let's say, compared to other countries, the workforce in other countries?
Yeah. So AI and computers will never replace humans on two levels, right? So number one, someone needs to come in and service the machine. We need to replace bearings. We need to add oil or lubrication or whatnot. And that is very hard to replace with computers, right? And then the second level is decision-making and making sense of all the different different risks that are involved in a decision, right? And what we see is the role of the maintenance technician is one example, right? Moving from being, so today when a maintenance technician comes to work every morning, they get a sheet of paper. This is what you need to do today. You have a weekly maintenance to do on this pump over there. Over there, you have an annual overhaul on that chiller or compressor, and their job is more manual, right? But as we go from compliance-based maintenance, our schedule of compliance-based maintenance, to more insight-driven, condition-based maintenance, the role of that maintenance technician or manager evolves into understanding probabilities and risk management, right? How do they make the decision of which machine they have to fix today versus they can continue running for another month or so, right? And that is a whole new skill set that the current generation of workers was not raised with, or doesn't have experience with, on one hand. And then on the other hand, people that go into trade schools are not trained for that either.
So you're saying that, if I'm hearing you right here, is that the additional skills are kind of the decision-making skills based on feedback they're getting from maintenance software or that sort of stuff. So rather than just go out and do, somebody says, go do maintenance on this machine, they go out and they do it and that's it. They're having to make that decision or make those decisions themselves based on feedback they're getting from various types of automation?
Correct. So the goal of technologies like Augury, right, is not to make decisions, it's to support decisions, to surface the right data and insight at the right time to the right person so they can take the right action, right? And in order to do that, you need a group of people that is aligned and working with the same data set, aligned on the KPIs to make those decisions together. And that is something that we're seeing already emerge. So until recently, or until now, in some cases, we've seen the maintenance group, the reliability group, and on one side, and then you have the operations and the process engineers on the other side. And most of the time, they're not aligned on KPIs, right? So if maintenance could have their way, they would take down the lines every week and replace all the parts just so they don't have unplanned downtime. And
Right.
if operations or process engineers could have their way, they would run the machines to the ground just to meet next week's shipment targets, right? But what we're actually seeing now that we are able to provide leading indicators to the machine's health and performance is we are seeing these two groups come closer together and have morning stand-up meetings, opening the platform, looking at what changed from last night, and then making decisions accordingly, right? So we're able to align the conversation around a set of data and insight, and now all of a sudden they can work together instead of against each other.
So I'm trying to understand here well, let me ask you this another way.
Yeah.
If there's a skills gap here, and that today's older, let's say, since I'm one of them, today's older worker may not have the skills necessary, and the younger workers may be too young, haven't been trained up in the skills specific to a particular industry or a particular trade. What does the U.S. need to do to address the skills gap? I mean, what needs to be going on right now so that these skilled workers are there and able to come online and start performing these jobs without having been, I guess, trained from scratch once they get hired?
Mm-hmm. So there are two options, right? So one, we can retrain the existing workforce. And in a sense, we're doing that today, right? So we're adding new types of technologies and we're training them on how to use them. But that is not enough. As we said, there are not enough workers today to meet the needs of our customers and manufacturers in the US. What is needed is for the next generation of workers that will come to manufacturing to have some of these skill sets already, have been trained with these skill sets already in place. But even more importantly, to somehow create a pool, right, of the more I wouldn't say sophisticated, but more, engineers or computer technologists who want to come to manufacturing, right? So today, if an engineer that's straight out of computer science, graduate, they would probably not choose to go work for an industrial company, right? It's not lucrative enough for them. How do we create that appeal for them, right? We enable them to work on very meaningful projects that have very clear impact on the world and on the company, right? We enable them to work with bleeding edge technologies on data sets that did not exist until recently, and AI or machine learning algorithms and approaches that they cannot find elsewhere. Right? So how do we pull this type of talent into the market as well?
Can technology itself, in an ironic way, can technology itself help decrease the skills gap? And I guess what I'm thinking here is, if we're saying that technology has contributed to fewer people, having the skills necessary because their jobs have grown in terms of the kind of technology, the kind of technological savvy they need in order to work in that particular job today, can that same technology somehow be used to train people up in those skills?
Yeah, so there are two parts to your question, right? One is, has technology created this gap, right? Let's start there, and then I can answer the second piece. What we've seen in the past 2 decades is a focus on supply chain efficiency, right? How do I drive cost out of my supply chain by offshoring to China and India? And how do I drive inventory levels out of my warehouses and logistics? And now, we can call it in a post-COVID world, or maybe even before that with the trade wars and between the US and China, we've seen this shift of decoupling supply chains, right? Restructuring global supply chains and making sure that we have more local manufacturing. So in the case of emergencies, we can leverage that or whatnot. Now, in order to onshore manufacturing, it's very hard for us to compete with the Far East or Southeast Asia, because talent is much more expensive here than it is over there, right? So you have to somehow make sure you get the same efficiencies of scale, right? Or economical, so it makes economical sense. And for that, you have to leverage technologies and automation, digitization, and whatnot. Right? So that's how we got to the need to add more technologies, because we don't have enough skilled workers to throw at the problem, right, for manual work.
Are other countries doing a better job at this? I mean, in terms of, I guess, training up skilled workers to work with the new technology?
Yeah, so in Europe, Western Europe, you can take Germany as an example, right? Their trade schools are on par with the leading universities, not just in the capabilities and the skill sets that the people acquire there, but also in the respect that they garner. Right? So if you study in one of those industrial focused trade schools, that's a career for you, and you're very proud of it. What happened in the US is, over time, as we kind of we shifted all of our manufacturing out of the States, we also bled all that talent. And now it's very hard to rebuild that from scratch. It's also an opportunity for us, right? It's an opportunity to rethink our approach to manufacturing, to leverage technology, and maybe we can leapfrog other countries and build kind of a more future resilient talent pool.
Well, does this fall on manufacturers or industry, let's say, better word? Does this fall on industry to be looking at trying to train up the skilled workforce? Does it fall on our educational systems, junior colleges, universities, and so forth? Who's going to be responsible for this upskilling?
I think the answer is both. And I wouldn't take the responsibility off of the vendors like Augury.
Oh,
Right?
sure. Okay.
Or the larger companies that are playing in this market. I mean, the onus is on us, not just to develop technologies with the market, but also make sure that it's well received and they see the value from it.
Okay. And a final question. I mean, if you were to, if somebody's watching this and they're going, yeah, I totally get what Saar is saying. We've seen it ourselves. We're trying to hire people. They don't have the right skills for the technology that we have in house. What is one or two things that companies could be doing to address this problem for themselves?
So what we've seen work really well for our customers is identifying someone that you already have on your staff, that is a bit more of an early adopter, right? A bit more tech savvy, and putting him or her in the position of owning the rollout of a certain technology or program and making them in charge. And what you would see is that that person brings so much passion to what he or she is doing that they are able to bring the whole team along with them. And that has worked really well for us and our customers.
Okay. Well, Saar Yoskovitz, CEO of Augury, thanks for joining us today. Interesting discussion.
No, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem. And that is it for today's show. If you have any topics or people or things you'd like us to bring on the show, just let us know by emailing us at qdl@qualitydigest.com, and we will do our best to bring those people or topics on the show. So once again, thanks for joining us, and we will see you at the next QDL. So long.